this is the only moment when the families from Vineland will be heard, either before or after. I would like my colleagues in the room, Mr. Joyce, Mr. Ari, give up your time for the families of Vineland. I'm willing to give up my time. Give up your time, Tom. Give up your time, Tom. Agree to go after them.
All right, if
Agree
we're...
to go after the people who work at Vineland. We can go last.
If we agree...
I go before you.
Thank you. And before we go into the formal part, I'd like to recognize Mayor Romano. Where are you, Mayor?
Thank you. I'd like to thank everybody for coming out, and I just want to show that my support is behind the VDC, as is the Senate plan. Thank you.
Mayor Romano, thank you very much for...
There are few issues that touch as many people as this issue does, and it's because it's about human beings. It's about a lifestyle. It's about our future. It's about doing things the proper way. This is an issue that touches all of us so much for multiple reasons. Let me be very clear for those that are here and understand this. There is a discussion of whether we believe moving more people in the community is appropriate or not. We do. We have always supported that, and we know that where it can be done, when it can be done, when it is appropriate, it should be done, and we support that, and that has happened. Years ago, there were over 2,000 people in Vineland Developmental Center alone, and many of them have been able to make it into the community. We get it, we understand it, we do not have any substantive or philosophical disagreement with that Olmstead Act or the idea of putting people in a least restrictive residential setting. But this is the issue, and I'm going to capsulize it. The issue is, as we do it, we should do it in a humane way, a proper way, a well thought out way, an organized way, a way that cares about human individual beings. And the people here that we care about are, number one, consumers. Consumers are always the first. And these consumers are people that are fragile and frail. Many have lived there for decades. Many of them are on the edge. Many of them are, at the end of the day, going to be transferred to other facilities, which is going to be extremely difficult for them, and does not put them in the least restrictive residential setting, is actually going to make it more difficult for them. And I don't mean to be melodramatic, and I really am not trying to be. I really, in my heart, believe that if it happens, there will be a number of them that will actually lose their lives prematurely. I don't believe it's the right thing.
Before Senator Ventry goes on, remember I said we're going to stop this at 4 o'clock, so don't take up time with the applause. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chairwoman. And I've listened to her. Secondly, first are the consumers. Secondly are the good working people of Cumberland County. These are people, to some people, that are challenged as well. And for those that don't know, and from folks that are here from out of state, we have the highest unemployment rate in the state of New Jersey. We don't have a lot of available opportunity, and this is very, very hurtful to this community. And regardless of what is said and what you will hear today, the vast majority of people, in my opinion, and in my legislative team's opinion, are not going to be able to find employment. There would be bumping involved. There are not going to be equivalent positions. It's going to be extremely stressful for them. I believe at the end of the day, people are not going to be able to put food on the table. They're going to lose their homes, and they're going to put a county at risk, even further at risk, and that is the wrong thing to do. It's not what we need in Cumberland County, because we've been fighting hard and working hard to do better, and we need to continue to do that. So, let me wrap up, because I know there are so many good people that want to speak here, and I thank the chair for her discretion. The bottom line is, let's study this issue, all 7 developmental centers, thoroughly. Let's see how the best way is to accomplish the goals of the Olmstead Act without hurting consumers, without putting the frail at risk, with having the least economic impact on a community. And we can do this. We can do this. We should have an economic study, and we should have a study of all 7 developmental centers, and then we should look at that and then produce a plan. We should not produce a plan because we have already arbitrarily decided that we're going to close one developmental center in the most challenged county in the state of New Jersey. So we need to look at this again, and that's why we're having this hearing. This is not about saying anything about the governor. It's not about saying anything about the commissioner. It's about all of you pouring your heart out to show that we want to do this the right way. But this is our future at stake, and I thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator, and my co-chair from the Assembly side and my co-colleague who drove up from Bergen County 45 minutes on the turnpike because of a jackknife tractor trailer for a change, which is what added to the trip. But glad that we were both able to be here. Assemblywoman Valerie Vinelandhearing11.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. I think we all know this is a very emotional issue today when we speak about closure. As the Senator really capsulized what we're here today for, I think just two reasons. One, the priority of the residents, the safety and security and well-being of the residents, and secondly, the employment here in Vineland. But I will also say that you cannot look at one closure in a vacuum. And there will be a legislative panel, and the Assembly members were appointed by the Speaker. I believe the Senate members were appointed by the President, Senate President, and I think, Jeff, you were on that committee. We are waiting to hear from our colleagues from the Republican side who will take part in that committee. And what that legislative panel will do is 10 members, 5 from the Assembly, 5 from the Senate, 6 Democrats, 4 Republicans, a balanced bipartisan panel. We will serve to undertake and look at a holistic and comprehensive approach to all 7 centers and 5 psychiatric centers, which we are still waiting to hear from as well. And I believe that there should be a moratorium on this particular closure until at least we find any of the recommendations that we will have by November. So with that, I want to thank Commissioner Velez for coming, for actually sending us the plan. But I think this today is for us to hear from everybody, all of the stakeholders, whether they're families, and the voices really that cannot be heard, those voices from the families and the patients in the centers. And I'm looking forward to hearing for their voices by their family advocates as well. And I want to thank my committee members for coming down. I think we all traveled a distance. I don't think anything is close to Vineland, Jeff. I want to thank my committee members, Assemblywoman Tucker, Assemblyman Albano, Assemblyman Milam, Assemblywoman McCose, Assemblywoman Riley. I think you wanted to say something. No, not yet. Okay, who else is here? Who else is missing? And Assemblyman Delaney. So I thank all of my committee members on Human Services and the Assembly for coming and actually listening to the first step of the dialogue from all of you. So thank you.
And rather than have the committee members take up time, now I think we're going to go right to the hearing. And starting off, they've got their paperwork in front of them. The Commissioner of Human Services of the State of New Jersey, Commissioner Jen Velez.
Good afternoon, Chairwomen Weinberg and Vinelandhearing11, and members of the Senate Health, Human Services, and Senior Citizens Committee and the Assembly Human Services Committee. I am here today with staff from the Division of Developmental Disabilities, Deputy Commissioner Dawn Apgar to my immediate left, Director of Developmental Center Operations, Pat Howell, to her left. CEO of the Vineland Developmental Center, Eloise Hawkins, is here today. Department Chief of Staff, Diane Zampa, is to my far right, and Department CFO, Chris Bailey, is to my immediate right. We are here at your request to discuss the department's recommendation to close Vineland Developmental Center, which is included in the proposed fiscal year 2012 budget. In preparation for today's hearing, you were sent the blueprint for closure, an addendum to the 2007 Olmsted Path to Progress report. We also sent you a publication entitled Moving Forward, which includes profiles of a number of individuals who have moved from developmental centers to the community. I'd like to first focus on this piece since I believe it embodies how transformative movement to the community from a developmental center can be. The individuals and their families interviewed for this publication represent at least 165 of the individuals currently living at Vineland Developmental Center. Their stories echo the stories of hundreds of people who have left institutions to join the community by living in a home or apartment with the supports they need to thrive. They are proof positive that what we're proposing is, 1, the right thing, 2, neither new nor groundbreaking, and 3, possible. Having said that, closure, and I think Senator Van Drew said it very well, is understandably emotional and controversial, and not the very least difficult. It takes thoughtful planning, an immense amount of coordination, multiple levels of cooperation, and security in the knowledge that what we're doing is right. And we have that in spades. Many of our staff participating in this process were actively involved in the closure of North Princeton Developmental Center, which closed in 1998. They remember what worked and what didn't, and they have years of experience working with individuals and their families, making decisions in the best interest of those individuals. In the document moving forward, there's one profile in particular that may resonate with some families grappling with what they perceive to be an uncertain future for their loved one moving to the community. Mr. Lee Weeder, a very vocal and forceful opponent of the North Princeton closure, wrote a letter 5 months after his son's move to a group home to thank the department and the developmental center staff and to share his joy and enthusiasm. In his words, the old adage that it takes a big man to admit he was wrong certainly fits here. A story about John, Francis, and Joseph and Alfonso shows that no matter an individual's diagnosis or longevity in a developmental center, community living is achievable. John lived at New Lisbon for 52 years and moved on his 80th birthday. Joseph lived 42 years at New Lisbon, the others over 20 years each there. 2 of them are non-ambulatory and have challenging medical conditions, but the 4 who chose to live together are enjoying organized day programming, outings to the mall, and other community sites and activities. They, with the group home staff, have become each other's extended family. I testified during my budget hearings that this is not a budget-based decision. Yes, closing a facility ultimately saves money, but this is an obligation that we have to acknowledge, honor, and advance individuals' civil right to live in the least restrictive setting with appropriate services to keep them safe and supported. It's required by the United States Supreme Court's Olmstead ruling. It's been long awaited and long advocated among individuals and their families, and it's a decision that's right and that's principled. The blueprint lays out the rationale for a decision to propose closure, and it was based on several factors. The system-wide census among the 7 developmental centers has decreased by 1,200 residents, about the same number of residents that currently reside in 3 developmental centers since the last closure. Many more families are choosing in-home services to support their loved one with developmental disabilities. The state has made strides in developing housing opportunities for placement of special needs populations. There is still a pending but still unsettled lawsuit against New Jersey for its slower pace in complying with Olmstead. And in comparison to other states, we were 49th in the country, above only Texas in institutions per capita. And finally, community infrastructure requires investment that can't be made if the state continues to pay for excess capacity in aging institutions that are becoming obsolete. These points are rarely debated. The selection of Vineland specifically is subject to much debate, but was as follows. Nearly half the residents, with the agreement of their families and attending staff, want to move to the community. 1, the number of local... Go ahead. Thank you. The number of local move-in ready community placements available and under development allows for easier transition of residents and continued proximity to family in the region. Vineland Developmental Center is the oldest developmental center, established in 1888, with many of the original buildings still in use but in disrepair, requiring millions in continued infrastructure maintenance. Regional accessibility will be maintained with the closure of Vineland, since there are 2 other developmental centers in the southern portion of the state, Woodbine 26 miles away, New Lisbon 60 miles away. And Vineland's decreasing census will create a growing funding challenge for the state, since it has the second lowest number of residents among the developmental centers. Included in the details of the blueprint are our transition and placement goals. There are very specific proposals that followed before, during, and after an individual moves from a developmental center to the community. It involves a transition team, the interdisciplinary team that assesses the resident, a transfer team that coordinates visits to the community for residents, a family support team that works with the families during the process, a resource team with psychologists and nutritional experts, advocacy coordinators who represent specifically the residents' interest, and support coordinators. There is no coercion involved in community placement. During the Senate Budget Committee, Senator Van Drew raised concerns about this particular issue, and I'll reiterate today what I said then. If any family or staff believes they're being manipulated by the process, it is incumbent upon them, it's incumbent upon all of us, any of us, to report it so that it can be investigated. We cannot appropriately address an alleged breakdown in the system if we're not given the information we need to do so effectively. I know my remarks have been lengthy, but I want to make one other important point. During the Senate budget hearing, Senator Van Drew asked if I could guarantee there'd be no problems, no setbacks, no incidents with regard to moving individuals from Vineland to the community. And he challenged that spreading out of residents among group homes and apartments would make monitoring safety more difficult. And I think that was informed by some press about New York. First, it is the department's charge to do everything we can to keep individuals safe, no matter their location. Second, and I don't say this dismissively, there can be no absolute assurance that every move for every resident will be trouble-free. Adjustments may need to be made with the location or with agencies. This is not unusual. Every person has unique and varying needs, and people cannot be moved without very close and careful regard to their preferences and to their needs. It is why staff work so closely with families to determine the most suitable arrangements. Further, and very importantly, over the course of the last 3 years, the department has shored up its community safety infrastructure. In collaboration with DDD's case management, and quality assurance groups, our Office of Program Integrity and Accountability supports community agencies by fingerprinting and providing criminal history background checks on all newly hired personnel. Our Office of Licensing inspects conditions and ensures safety protocols are followed, and our Office of Investigations reviews incident reports, investigates, and issues authoritative findings. In addition, the department provides a risk management report that is updated quarterly and posted online. This data dashboard measures agencies' operations in health, in safety, fiscal integrity, and serves as a resource for DDD, stakeholders, providers, consumers, and their families to navigate the universe of residential and day programs. Finally, in 2010, Governor Christie signed bipartisan legislation establishing the Central Registry of Offenders against individuals with developmental disabilities to record the names of formerly contracted caregivers who have been determined to have abused, neglected, or exploited a consumer. These individuals are banned from working in the DD community. Agencies contracted with the department have access to this registry to prevent them hiring anyone on it. The registry is populated and it is working. And I'd like to close my remarks by correcting.
Commissioner, excuse me. Please, this is going to be a
Decision to close is not in any way at all, a reflection of the work, the expertise, the commitment of Vineland's employees. The work that's performed every day at the Developmental Center is difficult, it's challenging, rewarding, gratifying, and very much appreciated by the department and by families. The care received by Vineland residents and other DC residents throughout the state is not at all a determining aspect of closure. This is instead about the civil rights of individuals to live in the least restrictive and most integrated setting in a community. Thank you.
Yes. Well, anyway, you said that Vineland was selected because of its proximity next to the other two centers down in South Jersey, New Lisbon and Woodbine. I think Woodbine is the all-male facility, correct?
Yes, Woodbine's all, I didn't say selected because of that one reason necessarily.
Well, that was one of the reasons I think you stated, though. It was one of the reasons. And so to that point alone, if you're going to transfer the women from Vineland, what would the plan be for New Lisbon for the male facility? Would that become co-ed at that point?
New Lisbon right now is co-ed.
Well, Woodbine, I'm sorry, Woodbine is all male, correct?
Woodbine is all male, yeah.
And that was one of the options.
Yeah. They're all very large campuses, right? Traditionally, Vineland's been only women, Woodbine's been only men, New Lisbon has been co-ed. Part of the reason why we included the two different developmental centers in there is because when we talked about job loss, and it was a particular point, certainly for the community and for the developmental center, with respect to job loss. I wanted to point out the fact that as you begin to exercise those bumping rights among titles, there are other opportunities in two relatively close developmental center, and it doesn't leave the region without access to some jobs. So the 1,400 number, and it's in the plan, actually gets down to about a 500 or so number.
Right, and I think to the senator's point, and I don't think there are answers, but the waiting list is over 8,000. And again, by moving these families out of the centers, to me, it just becomes more, the waiting list becomes increased. And it's very difficult. If they're going into centers, they're not going into community homes at this point, right? You're transferring into other centers, correct? No.
So I just think one point before, maybe, I'm not sure if you're moving on or not, but the one point to make is, as we have reached some people on the waiting list, the ask from the state is not a residential placement necessarily in all cases, which may be surprising, it was to me. It's in fact for some services in home. The majority of the people who have been reached as of late are asking for services in home, which is why the number is, it's not truly representative of what the residential need is. It's always been defined that way because that's how we've defined the waiting list to date.
And just one point on the budget, and I probably Senator Van Drew would, I think, it goes to where you're at with the economics of this, because you were on the budget committee, I believe, when you listened to the savings. I think there were two projected savings, $130 million that I think you projected, and then I heard another number of $20 million. Whatever that number is, can any of that, or are we guaranteed that any of those savings are going to be reinvested into the community and not plug the budget? Because the last hearing I had in Human Services was on Hagedorn. Senator Cody was speaking on this, and the bottom line was the savings were going to plug the budget. Whether it's 30 million, 20 million, or 15 million, whatever that number is, can we be assured, and people from both sides of this opinion, that those monies are going to be reinvested directly into the community? Because if not, then we are just plugging a budget, and that is my concern.
Well, so there's no budget savings associated with this year at all, right? And in fact, it actually costs us. And part of the reason why it's on the positive side versus the negative side for savings is because we do, in fact, need to shore up a community so we have placements and services for people. So there's an investment right now in the community, and what all of us would want is that for that investment to continue. And I think it was actually legislated several years ago, over 10, I think, that savings from at least the sale of a place would go to shore up either the DD side or the mental health side. So right now, the premise that is very much understood is as you close and as you move people into the community, you need a funded community setting. So I can't tell you today that $1 from a savings goes into the community, but it's not a part of this year's equation at all. There's an investment in the community this year.
And one last thing, and then you have a vacant building on your hand. If the proposal of closure is to have complete closure in 2 years, then you have a vacant building. What does the state plan to do with that building? The vacant building of Vineland, of the developmental center. If it all goes through with your proposal by 2014, the closure of Vineland, you will have a vacant center. What does the state plan to do with those vacant centers?
Any state land at all, whether it's, I don't know who else, corrections or DeMava, but at least for human services, any state property, once it's declared surplus by our department, goes to Treasury. That's just the process, that's all. For disposition of the building, Assemblywoman, that's the plan. There's a process that's set in regulation. It's not part of anything that's new. It's been there for...
I just would like to acknowledge, though, my new members that came in, Assemblywoman Mary Pat Angelini and Assemblyman Angel Fuentes. I think, right? Angel is here.
Yes. The point is that the Department of Human Services, this has been for decades, the Department of Treasury is responsible for state buildings. So we are there while we're there. Once it's empty, that's just the process. It's always been that way. It's there for Marlborough, North Princeton, all buildings.
May I answer that question for you?
Yes, sorry, Senator Allen.
Legislation was passed about 3 years ago and signed into law that said that every building that was found surplus had to be made available first to groups that could use the building, groups, for instance, adjudicated youth, or children with emotional, mental illness issues, those kinds of things. So that's number one, that they had sort of first dibs on those buildings. The question is, would this building, if it were emptied, be able to handle those sorts of things, or is it in a state of disrepair, or on a spiral of disrepair such that it wouldn't be able to?
So there's two campuses of Vineland. They're 5 miles apart, east and west. The capital needs right now projected for Vineland, but these are life safety issues, so if people were to continue to live there, what we present to the Capital Commission every year on behalf of all the developmental centers and the psychiatric hospitals are capital needs in hundreds of millions of dollars. The capital needs right now that we've identified for Vineland, again, if people were to continue to live there, are primarily HVAC needs, and the total is about $20 million for HVAC and 2 other needs. So $20 million is what we would be looking at to address life safety, which right now is all Capital Commission is funding. So of all the renovation needs or whatever we have in every facility that we maintain and operate, that's what we would have to present for Vineland.
Could I continue, or would you like to?
I'm sorry?
I'd love to continue, but I can do it at a different time if you want to.
Continue.
How much money do you put into this building every year? And do you see that, if we were to keep Vineland open, do you see it as a constant number, or?
The annual costs are $119 million a year.
Say that again?
119 million.
Just for the record, when somebody else speaks, give your name just.
Oh, I'm sorry, Chris Bailey, Department CFO.
And that's in capital costs, or that's?
No, that's total costs, salaries.
What is the capital investment
Capital costs
each year?
from 06 to 11, actually, Senator Van Drew asked this question through the Office of Legislative Services. 11.4 million has been invested in Vineland.
Okay. Is there federal funding involved? And,
Yes.
Will that change depending on what we do here?
Yes.
And then how will it change?
Over the series of years, the federal, it's what's called intermediate care facility, ICF, we get revenue. As a result of having salaries, those kind of costs get offset through the ICF revenue fund. That'll continue to go down through the 2-year closure process.
And one final question for the commissioner. What kind of costs do we think we are going to undertake if indeed we close Vineland, but we're opening, I would assume, group homes and so on? What will that cost be to get it up and running, and what will then the yearly cost be?
Senator, do you mean for community residences?
Yes.
So part of the benefit at the moment for Vineland as well are these, they're called PAFA homes. It's in the plan. It's Parent and Friends Association. At the moment, PAFA owns 22 group homes in the area. There's 40 vacancies right now. So at least 40 of those, of the residents who would move from Vineland would go into those PAFA home vacancies. And then Chris pick up on the costs.
But clearly, if we look at the waiting list, we need to have these, whether it involves folks from Vineland or not. What is the cost to get something going on a per client basis, and then what is the ongoing cost? And compare that for me with
So
Vineland.
in fiscal year 12, it would be the total community funding, which is state and federal funds combined, would be $9.664 million. This is around page 16 or so of the plan. In fiscal year 13, it would move up to $36,800,000. The cost differentials, what we've estimated in the plan, it's about $266 in the institution and $160 in the community. $266,000 in the developmental center, and $160 in the community.
That's per client.
Per client.
Okay, thank you.
finish, Senator?
Yes, thank you very much.
Senator Van Drew, and then we'll move to the Assembly side here.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I'd like to go back again to what both chairs actually brought up. We have a waiting list of 8,000 folks, and over 4,000 have emergent needs. So let me start with this first question. Do you believe the people that are in the developmental center now are receiving good care? Are they nourished well? Are they protected? Are they treated well? Are the people that work around them taking as much loving care as they can of them, to the best of your knowledge?
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
They do a good job.
Sure.
So we have folks that are in the developmental center now, some which eventually might be better served in the community, I understand, but are really being taken good care of. Yet we have thousands of folks out in the community who are just dying to get into a community setting. So as both chairs brought out, we're going to actually put more people into a community setting, but not be able to take care of the folks who are already out there that want to go into one. Life is simple for me sometimes. I don't understand why we don't take care of the people who are out there, are not receiving adequate care in some cases. They are not, where these folks are. Why don't we take care of them first and get them squared away and then move on to these other issues? We all want you to speak, and boy, we really do appreciate the applause, but the chair's turning to me now
There's more than just two pressures on any bed at any one time. There's emergency placements that happen every single day, sometimes more than once a day. There's people from out of state who should be back in New Jersey. There's people in their homes, some of whom need residential, some of whom do not. And there's people in developmental center. So there's a lot of pressure on one bed at any one time.
Commissioner, thank you, but through the chair, I'm specifically asking you, these folks we know for sure, absolutely, 100%, we know want to be in a community setting. Some of them may be okay, some of them aren't so okay. So why don't we take care of them first before we unload more people into the community? I believe the community, I care about civil rights too, but I care about their civil rights. The right of somebody who may be in a home, their own personal home, and not even adequately taken care of, who may have real issues that need to be taken care of better, that don't have that opportunity. Why don't we take care of them first?
Because it's not a civil right. The analysis isn't one of civil rights when you're in one's own home. When you're in your own home, you're not in an institutionalized setting. So I genuinely believe that it's a civil rights issue when one is institutionalized. It is not in one's own home. And I just want to make sure I clarify this one point. The waiting list individuals, many of whom those who we have reached, are not asking necessarily for residential placements. It was always thought that. When the 1998 plan was written, it was thought that it's a 10-year plan to end the waiting list and get everybody someplace in the community. That's not, in fact, the case anymore. I mean, it is for many people who need, particularly with aging and parents who are frail or medically compromised. But it is not the case for everybody in their own home who's now reached on the waiting list. They are instead asking to be served in their home with services and supports. It is indeed, I mean, even if you don't ascribe to the view that it's a civil rights issue, which is certainly many people's view, I do, and I believe it genuinely is. But that only enters into the equation when one is institutionalized. It does not when one is in one's own home.
And Commissioner, I understand the technicality of it, and I thank you for reminding me, but the bottom line is, the reality is that there are people who are in their own home that aren't doing as well as they could nearly do, that aren't nourished as well, that do have problems, that really, whether they get services in their own home or were put into an adequate community setting, would be served much better. Yet, and it's not just your problem, it's the legislature, everyone, we haven't taken care of that. Yet, but because of some technical issues, we're saying we're going to move more people out of the community, not deal with that other issue yet, but move more of these folks, many of whom aren't even asking to be moved out into the community. And that's the issue and the problem I have with what. One other question I have, and I asked you this in the Budget Committee, and I'm not going to ask you everything I asked you in the Budget Committee. We'd be here for 2 hours, so we're not going to do that. I know, the chair reminded me I'm not. I just have a couple more. The PAFA homes, you said there's 40 vacancies. And again, there's folks that want to get into these homes, and what you explained to me then was those vacancies are kept there because of emergent type needs that sometimes people need to get in there. Did I understand that right or not?
The vacancies that will exist in PAFA will be vacant and available once we staff up those homes. Right now, those homes are not staffed to accept people until we get them staffed fully.
And again, if there's need for more community placement in the community, why didn't we staff them last year or the year before? I mean, I know that's some dollars, but shouldn't we be focused towards that? In other words, we're saying we have 4,000 to 8,000 people on a waiting list. Let's staff them up. Let's take care of that problem first. I don't quite understand that. The $30 million savings that's eventually achieved, and I know, just so everybody understands, I wasn't on the budget, you explained it very well. In the beginning, this is going to cost us more, actually. It's not going to save us money. It's going to cost more to close Vineland. However, ultimately, by 2014, I think it was, there's a $30 million saving. Where does that come from? Why is it so much less expensive? Do employees get paid less? Is staffing different? I mean, there's a reason things are cheaper. What's the reason?
Well, there's a huge salary disparity between people who are paid in the community and people who are paid
So
at
the people who
Vineland.
are paid in the community are going to get paid much less, and I know this for a fact.
Well,
I'm
we
just
know
here
this
to-
from when
absolutely.
we've had issues before about talking
Right.
about certain community providers. There's a huge salary disparity.
Through the chair, some community providers were so at risk that literally through your services, they lost their health care, even they had to be put on family care. And it was through your work and others that we at least got them health covered. Is that correct?
What we did was, in a unionized provider, when the contract was being renegotiated to eliminate dependent coverage, we facilitated so that those kids would not lose coverage, and family care was an option that we linked them to. It wasn't the only one, but we linked them to that.
And through the chair, again, family care is being frozen, as we know, for those
Not for
that-
children.
Right, for adults, though, number one. And secondly, we all do know that if you didn't do that, and we thank you for that, because the result would have been disaster, that the ultimate outcome would have been the state has a responsibility, and all those folks that were in that setting would have had to be moved into a state setting. We even would have had more people.
Well, I
The ultimate-
made it clear
if they
during
close
those...
down, we have to take care of them.
Well, we've had providers, I mean, since my time as commissioner, there's been two that I can remember off the top of my head. There's probably been a couple of others of providers that has in fact happened. Provider has decided to leave New Jersey. We've had to relocate those individuals. They have not gone to a developmental center, the ones that I'm talking about. They instead went to other provider agencies.
Commissioner, I have, as you know, many, many questions, but out of respect for the chair and for the other members and for so many people here, really, we've heard each other speak a lot about this. I think the audience wants to speak, so I reserve my right for later, but I will stop. Thank you, Commissioner.
Yeah, I also have questions, and I'll reserve my right to not add to it, because I'd like to give my members a chance as well. Assemblyman Albano.
Questions and concerns that I have. Like my other members, we'd probably be here till 4 o'clock just on us asking questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stress to the most important things to me that I believe are the major concerns of this whole issue. I've been in this city, I've lived in this city all my life, 57 years, and I have never lived any further than 2 miles from the VDC. To me, that is not an institution, but one large group home. The people who work in this facility, the people who live in this facility are my neighbors, they're my friends, and they are my families. So if I get a little emotional today, please bear with me. Some of my questions are, this is, correct me if I'm wrong, the path to progress, correct? What we are doing, which was started under the Corzine administration.
The department's plan with respect to the Olmsted decision is called the Path to Progress, yes.
Okay. Under the path to progress, or Olmsted, it did not call for the closure of the Vineland Developmental Center, am I correct?
You are correct.
Okay. I'm not going to go through the facts and the figures. We heard about the 8,000 people in the state needing our help as a state, and I believe that is our responsibility. My first question through the chair is, if we have 8,000 people out there needing emergent care, why don't we use the VDC group home as a stop-between for the people who are waiting for care, and then we try later to put them inside of a group home if that is able to be done. How are we going to address the needs of our community if we shut down the center? I believe that number is going to climb from maybe 8,000 to 10 to 12,000 because we're never, ever going to be able to provide enough group homes for all these people. We're talking about the plan if we close VDC, talking about 72 group homes to replace these people. And I'm glad you said that this is not a budgetary issue, because I did the math, and I think my math is pretty good. I see this costing the state millions and millions of dollars more to go through this program than we are right now. But what I'm going to address is the emotional part. And a lot of times we deal with numbers, we deal with figures, we deal with data. I'm going to deal with the emotional part today, because this legislative team here, Assemblyman Vineland, myself, Senator Van Drew, we have been to the VDC on many, many occasions for different reasons, under different capacities. And I'm going to address the issue about jobs. We're talking about thousands of people losing their jobs in a county that has the highest unemployment in the state of New Jersey. We're talking about the care of the residents that are in these facilities. We have seen it firsthand, and I'm going to bring up one instance, one thing that we do every year over there on a yearly basis, and that is the Christmas party. We talk to the residents, we talk to the directors, we talk to the people that work there. Nobody can do the job that these people do. And when you see the faces on these residents and the love and the care that is given to them in this facility is beyond the words of speaking. And I think that the people on the state level who deal with this issue maybe need a reality check on how these people live in these facilities, because they're not going to find this love and care anywhere else. My major issue is about the emotional stability of these residents, and we have 68% of these residents that have been there for 30 years or more. I know if I was living at a home with people who worked there, who were my family, I would be devastated if I was taking away from my home or my family who take care of me every day because the federal government or the state believes it's the right thing to do. I believe that this is the wrong thing to do. This will be such an economic disaster for our city and our county, not only on the people that work here. This country, their biggest drive right now, and the biggest drive in the state of New Jersey should be providing jobs for the people in this state, not eliminating jobs.
It's now almost 10 after 2. We're only going to be here till 4 o'clock. So I'm going to respectfully ask, we have other people who want to speak. If you've got questions for the commissioner, could you please give them? And please stop taking up the time. We know where you stand, and that's why we're here.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I will close very briefly. Commissioner, and I know you have done this, but what I'm asking you, not only as a legislator, but as a resident of this county, and somebody who represents the people in this room, to please, you and your committee, sit down again. Not only go through the numbers, but think about the emotional part, the devastational part, not only to the people in this district, but to our residents. And that is the most important thing, is that they get the utmost care that this state can provide. And I believe they're getting it right where they're at. Thank you.
we ask the members of Commissioner's staff to sit behind us so that we have the table free for those of you who are being called to testify in case we are going to call you up in groups. So they are sitting behind us at our request. Robin, I know that you've had some more than your share of physical challenges, which is why I wanted to call on you. If you can say a few words, call on you first.
I really am here as the person who's been trying, since these hearings were discussed, to notify the families from Vineland. Unfortunately, Commissioner Velez did not see it appropriate to send letters to all of these wonderful families about today's hearing, which is why I wanted my friends from Vineland, parent to parent, to be able to speak where you've all heard me ad nauseum, I'm sorry to say. But you know what I'm going to say, and it's much more appropriate for them to speak than for me to speak today. Again, no letter went out to them. I found them. I am so glad I found them because I love them all. And I just would like to yield my time, please. I wouldn't be any good for me to speak.
Well, out of respect for Robin, we're going to allow each of you 2 to 3 minutes, and that's it.
Thank you.
So thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, guys.
Good afternoon. My name is Lori Barton, and I am a resident of Montvale, New Jersey. I am here to express my concerns today regarding my sister Diane Wolfson, who is called Vineland Developmental Center her home for the past 54 years. Diane has profound mental retardation and cerebral palsy. Diane was a resident of the West Campus of Vineland Developmental Center until this past summer when the state decided to go ahead with the process of closing it. As a family, we have been adamant that Diane not be moved to a group home. Therefore, we were told she would be moved to the East Campus, with the staff and family deciding which building would suit her needs best. We had visited Diane prior to her move and were told that placement of other residents were currently in progress and we would be notified to discuss any pending move for Diane in the next few weeks. Shortly after our visit, I was surprised to receive a phone call notifying me that Diane had already been moved to the East Campus to Wolverton. Here is one of my biggest concerns. As an active guardian, aren't we supposed to be part of the decision-making process? We clearly were not. And now we have all been informed if Vineland Developmental Center closes, family involvement is one of the 3 criteria in making the move. Will that really be true? Obviously, it wasn't with Diane when she was moved from one campus to the other. She has spent most of her time on the West Campus. The staff that has treated Diane has always been with the most loving care and concern. She is able to express to us her feelings in her own way, and we have clearly seen how comfortable and satisfied she has been at Vineland Developmental Center. The staff is a very special group who treats all women there like family. This is one of the main reasons why my family has been asked many, many times, why not move Diane to the North Jersey Developmental Center, which is about 15 minutes from our home, instead of coming almost 3 hours to see her on a very frequent basis. It is not about the convenience of the family. It's about displacing a vulnerable human being from her home and a familiar environment after 54 years and forcing her to make a change. Not only for Diane, but I know for most of the women who are left at Vineland Developmental Center, change is a dirty word. Having to adapt to a new home, new schedules, new staff is detrimental to their well-being. This was obvious when Diane was moved from one campus to another. Just moving my sister from West to East Campus has had a negative effect on her emotional well-being and her health. And now, Diane is to be moved again. So, if the Vineland Developmental Center is extremely competent and loving, the residents that reside there love their home, and Commissioner Velez has stating the closing is not due to the monetary issue, then I wonder, what is a possible closing of Vineland Developmental Center based on?
Can you sum up, please?
I've seen the literature that says the reasons, and I have to tell you, any of the developmental centers' names could have been on there. So in closing, and I appreciate you all listening to me, group homes are great for some individuals with disabilities. But I really wonder how many of you, including the governor and his staff, have actually visited Vineland Developmental Center. If you haven't, please, please try to go. Hopefully you will see how important Vineland Developmental Center is to the women who still reside there, and you will realize too, what is good for one is not good for all. Please keep the developmental center open.
Okay, Commissioner, I know you heard one story here about somebody who was moved apparently without the consent of her family. We have gotten several emails and reports, and I would hope that you will look into each and every one of them and get back to us with the result of your investigation. Thank you. Sir, give your name to the record, please, and we have a timer here, so 3 minutes.
Well, I hope I can keep this together, but my name is Curtis Schneider. I live with my wife, Fran, in Jackson, New Jersey. We brought 5 children into this world. Marie is our youngest, who lives now in Vineland, and since March of '09. She started out in 5 different group homes since she's 5 years old. And I'd have to say that those group homes were good for her. She learned, she achieved, and she accomplished many things. She could ride a horse, she could swim, we took her to weddings. But in the last group home, it was different. She ran into a problem. She was really out of it, and there was one night when somebody who was supposed to be on staff that night, and Marie, because she had a neurological breakdown from medications that were given to her, and I'm not quite so sure that they were right, but she broke down that night, and she was terribly out of control. The fellow who was supposed to be on duty that night begged off and had a friend of his mind that house with 4 other clients beside Marie. He had no credentials. He was just there to babysit. Marie went off the wall, and she was tied up. She was physically abused. She was sent to a psychiatric center in Elizabeth, in Trinitas Hospital, where she was in and out for 10 weeks. And they were appalled. The doctors were appalled at Trinitas that she came in with bruises, lacerations all over her body. We could see that she was tied at her ankles and her wrists. After 10 weeks, a judge came into the play, and he said, they finally got her to a state where she was under control, and the judge said, Marie has to get on with her life. She doesn't belong in a psychiatric center. The parents are not going to send her back to that group home, which was under investigation for 4 or 5 months before we found out the results of that investigation. And they charged, I remember the judge pointing at the DDD representative, saying that it's your responsibility to find a suitable place for Marie, and the next time we meet is March 5, and you better have that suitable place. Well, 2 days before March 5, they did find a place, because they sent out a blast email to every agency and DC center in the state of New Jersey. Only one answered, and that was Vineland. Little did we know that that was going to be the best place for her. She's been here since March 10 of '09, and I have to say, when she came in, she was going to be admitted to the infirmary for 30 to 60 days to evaluate her. Well, they were so good there, and I had to say to the RN at the infirmary, you don't know what you're going to get yourself into here. I mean, the way she behaves and everything. And the lady said to me, Mr. Schneider, fear not. Whatever Marie will do, we've seen it before. We know how to deal with it, and we're good at what we do.
Thank you, Mr.
There was a time when a group home was good for Marie. Not now. She's back in diapers. She recognizes us. That's the only thing we have. Her 2 brothers are here in support. My wife is not well and she could not be here. We're in our 70s. This is the place for Marie. The staff is wonderful. They love her, they care for her, and they provide for her. I implore you not to close this center. It's a wonderful place, as it could be.
Thank you very much, and Marie is very privileged to have you as her father, and thanks for being such a
Thank
great
you.
advocate. Thank you, and thank you to both brothers who were here, too.
Sorry.
And Mr. Schneider, if I can just say, that's why we're here, that's why these people drove this distance. There are people who care, and we're going to do our level best. We're going to do everything we can.
Your name, please.
That's from Trenton.
My name's William Heppel. My daughter Barbara has been in Vineland for 38 years. She's 50 years old. She can't talk, she can't walk, if she has pain, she can't tell nobody. But the staff of Vineland has treated her wonderful for 38 years. I just do not see why you people want to close this place. She's good, like this gentleman said here. Senator Cody, what did he find in the group home last month, in February? I mean, it's terrible, these group homes. They found a woman, 64 years old, beat up in the backyard. We don't want that. We don't want that for our children. Vineland's safe, and the people that work there are the best people in the world. After 38 years, I go every week and see my child. Every week they'll tell you, don't close it, please. That's all.
Mr. Hempel, we read about you in the newspaper.
Yes,
Your
ma'am.
daughter's name is Barbara Judith.
Excuse me?
Your daughter's name is Barbara?
Barbara Judith.
They wrote a great article about you and about your daughter.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you very much. Thank you. My wonderful son, he wants to say.
Just very briefly, I wanted to recognize teammates in this fight that have been there. And just so you know, your Board of Freeholders has fought hard, and they're going to continue to fight hard. Freeholder Magazoo is here. Freeholder Duncans, who has had meetings as well, is here. I think I saw Freeholder Whalen, Freeholder Janarone, and I think Freeholder Fiocchi was here as well. I don't know of any freeholders. Those are our freeholder board. They are the ones that are fighting for us. I want to thank Freeholder Duncans and Magazoo and Whalen and Janarone for the work they do. Thank you, freeholders.
Thank you.
My name is Michael Schneider. I'm the
You have to, in order to be part of the record, you have to speak into the microphone.
My name is Michael Schneider. I'm the oldest brother of Marie. Point that got made up before was the civil rights of these people at the VDC to be in a community setting. My question is, what about the rights of the people at the VDC to be in the place that's good for them? If they're already in a place that's good for them, why do they need to be moved?
Thank you. You got a chair?
Do we have time for one more? No, one.
Well, no, we've got other people.
You wanted people who were moved against their will, this gentleman can do that.
Are you a parent?
He is a guardian, he's a brother, right? That's fine, I'd like to hear from some people. Quick.
This is the last from this
Yes,
group, and we're
thank
going
you.
back to our list.
Reader's Digest first.
They sent Darlene away. Wait, I'm the brother of Darlene Long. They sent Darlene along. No, they sent Darlene away and told her she was getting her nails done. They tricked her. They sent her up to Elizabeth. She been in the state school for over 40 years. And, I want her back to the Vineland Development Center. And the staff, her staff, everybody know her.
They told her she was going to get her nails done, and they threw her in the car.
They she said we were going to get her nails done, and they threw her in the car and sent her.
Chairwoman, may I ask a question? Just briefly, are you saying to me that somebody was told they were going to get their nails done and they were going to go back to the Vineland Developmental Center, but then they were then moved to a different developmental center?
Yeah.
And I think the committee has heard that, and we never mentioned a name because we didn't want to get folks in trouble. But if you do want to mention that name, I would ask that that be investigated, Commissioner, and find out what happened with that. That's what you've asked for, and we have another person here.
They do need a name now.
So if you give us that name.
Or
You don't have to do it now, later, quietly and privately.
Right, okay. I would like to get her back here.
He wants her.
Thank you, Robin, for bringing the families to share their stories. We appreciate it. Next, we have, if I'd like to call
of disabilities, even those with very significant needs, can be served very well in community-based settings so long as the necessary resources are provided. And we believe communities are enhanced when people with developmental disabilities are part of them. New Jersey currently ranks 49th in the nation on this issue. What does every other state in the union know that New Jersey doesn't know? But let me be clear that we also believe fully in choice. Our position is that anyone who currently lives in Vineland Developmental Center who does not want to move into the community setting should not be forced to do so and should be allowed to move to one of the state's other developmental centers instead. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on this important topic. I'd like to turn the rest of my time over to Debbie Legecko and Gary Rubin, a mom and a self-advocate who both have very personal connections to the issue.
Can you give your full name for the record, please?
Sure. My name is Debbie Legecko. I'm the mother of 2 adult sons with disabilities. My 24-year-old is currently residing at the Hunterdon Developmental Center. I also have a 27-year-old who is living at home and he is autistic. My 27-year-old is very capable, works 2 part-time jobs, but mentally he's probably at the level of a 12-year-old. He'll require supervision for the rest of his life. I just have a few points I want to make from a parent's perspective, having had experience with a developmental center as well as with a child living at home. There's so much talk about choice. But when my son Frank was placed in an emergency at the developmental center, the community wasn't an option for him. There was nothing available for him in the community. Other than a developmental center, his only other choice was a nursing home. He has complex medical needs that require 24-hour nursing care. As of now, there's still no options for him outside of the institution in spite of having lived in a community setting for 23 years. I'm certainly not opposed to developmental centers for the families who really want them, but I have a hard time understanding why we still have 7. I know that they're not all at full capacity and would require millions of dollars to update. And given the fact that there is the extensive waiting list, I don't see the justification there when there's no money to serve my children and others like them in the community. My son Derek has been on the waiting list for 12 years, and there's really no end in sight. As my husband and I get older, we have a very big concern that if something should happen to us, the only option is for him to be placed in an institution.
We'll take care of it.
And losing your parents and then all of a sudden being thrust in an institutional setting, I think would be pretty devastating for him. I think unless we change the way we think about people with developmental disabilities, my kids are both going to spend the remainder of their lives institutionalized. And that really saddens me more than you can imagine. I feel people with disabilities should be able to choose where they want to live, just like you and I, and we need to start changing now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Gary Rubin. I hope you guys can hear me. Anyway, I've been in 2 developmental centers. I now live in a community, which is great.
I'm sorry, did you give your name?
Gary Rubin.
Okay.
I now live in a community. I was in 2 developmental centers prior to where I came from in 1992. I'm totally independent. You know, I come and go as I please. I have a job. I work part-time, 3 days a week, 9 hours the whole week. You know, and, you know, I have no problem getting around. I'm a strong advocate for the state of New Jersey. I also wear so many hats because 3 of my groups are here right now, pretty much. But, you know, I help people with their challenges and stuff too as well. And I have many friends that are still in the developmental center, and I hope to God they get out. And, you know, I just want to be, you know, as productive in my community as I can be. I just think that, you know, again, 7 developmental centers, they're just the Garden State. It's time for, you know, progressive change. I mean, that's without saying. I mean, we're not stuck in the 50s or whatever, so to speak. But, you know, I like to see things, you know, progress as time goes by. But, you know, other than that, my friends in the community and me in the community, it's great because then I could help more people achieve what they need to achieve. And, you know, I'm just happy to do all that, and I thank you for listening to me.
Senator?
My name is Lowell Aryeh. I'm the Executive Director of the Alliance for the Betterment of Citizens with Disabilities. ABCD, as we're better known as, is an association of nonprofit organizations in New Jersey who actually serve people with multiple physical and neurological developmental disabilities. These are the folks who are the most medically complex and neurologically complex people in the state. And these agencies provide these services in the community. As Tom mentioned, last year, a number of disability agencies came together and wrote a letter to the governor requesting that he close a developmental center over the next 2 years. We were one of those agencies, and we're very pleased that he said that. One of the things that has come out is that some people have said that people with developmental disabilities living in the developmental centers are, quote, too disabled. However, as I said, our agencies serve these individuals. According to the Path to Progress that was published in 2007, the average people in developmental centers back then were 50 years old. 57% had psychiatric diagnoses, 24% with cerebral palsy, 18% with autism, 39% with visual impairments, 40 to 60% with health conditions, 39% using a behavioral specialist.
Wait. This is tough duty today, believe me.
And let me tell you, I give you the highest honor and award for what you have done today. I would almost say this is beyond, fair duty. But that's what we elected you for, and we thank you for what you're doing.
She told me paybacks are tough, though.
I represent about 9,000 members, 500 of whom work at Vineland Developmental Center. And I had come to elevate really 4 different points. The impact of the closure of Vineland on the residents, the impact that it would have in the community, the like of the anticipated cost savings, and the Department of Human Services, the undignified manner by which they are removing people. But most of that has already been elevated. But what has been talked about here is something that I have firsthand knowledge of, and that is the closure of North Princeton. I worked through that. And what has been said here was so far from what actually happened. I have a whole folder full of notes, and of course it will be shared with you, but I want to talk to you from the heart, from what I experienced. And I'm sure my sister here, who was also around, even though we say we're still 27, during the closure of North Princeton. And it was shameful what happened to those people there. 90 days after that facility closed, there was no follow-up, and they had no idea what had happened to them. A lot of them went into other facilities, and I want to come back and address what is happening to people that they're pushing into other facilities. But let me just share one instance of what happened. At North Princeton, being in a rural area, the residents were free to go as they wish because they were in a safe surrounding. Some of them was moved, and I want to emphasize one person who called himself Ray Charles. Ray Charles was moved to Vineland development, to New Lisbon, which is an area where there was a primary highway there. Ray Charles was not happy there. Ray Charles got killed by a car because he wandered off, because he had the freedom of the grounds. And when certain people who had worked at North Princeton heard about this, they cried. One of them was my husband. We are experiencing the same kind of thing with the movement of some of these clients into other facilities. We can talk about it because we represent the other facilities. New Lisbon took it upon themselves, because they are the receiver of several of these clients, took it upon themselves to say to the department, slow it down. We can't handle it, because one of the first stories that we heard was about the individual, and let me tell you, there is total fear at Vineland among the residents there about getting on a bus, because they know that getting on a bus means there is no return, and they have no idea where they're going. But we heard the story about how they got the one woman on the bus saying that she was going to get her nails done. Well, let me tell you another story about a woman who was fooled on the bus that landed at Greenbrook Regional Center. Now, prior to her going there, and this individual is considered to be legally blind, but she does have an adjustment disorder. But as long as she's happy, she's fine. She was fooled, had no idea where she's going. Keep in mind, she's blind, familiar with her surroundings there at Vineland, was very happy, but when she discovered that she was in a new place amongst strangers, being frightened, started to act out. And they're having difficulties there at Greenbrook. And this is just one of the examples. This can be repeated at Greenbrook. It can be repeated at New Lisbon, because most of them are going to these two facilities. And we're hearing from Hunterdon that those who are ill, very ill, will go to Hunterdon. I talk with my people at Hunterdon because we represent them. And Hunterdon is saying to us that we will get all of the trachs, even though we only have 2. We have 2, but they're expecting 9. We are not trained to do that. I'm talking about what my people are receiving, what is happening in the facility. But let me just bring it on home a little more about what happened this morning when you were there, because there are all kinds of tricks not being just played on the residents, but being played on you. When you went to make when you made the appointment to make your visit at Vineland this morning, the CEO called the vocational office and told them to remove all of the ladies from SIBO because they didn't want too much drama. Because you see, these ladies at SIBO can speak up. They're high functioning enough to say what it is they want and don't want. So while you were there,
I would like to find out, I would like an investigation to the fact that it was.
So while you were there, to make sure that they could not tell you how they felt, they took them on a trip. That happened this morning. Now, you've heard the stories about people being fooled in the vans and what have you. They fooled you this morning because they did not want you to know the truth. If the plans were in place and they were workable plan, why have all of the tricks that the department is pulling to get people to move? This is unconscionable. It is unforgivable, because what you're dealing with are people here, and what my members are saying to me, that the movement of these people are attributed to the movement of furniture. There is no regards to who they are and what it is that they want. And this is very disheartening. But let me just move on, because there are many people out here who wish to speak. let me just say something about the community, because being a union, we represent some of these quote-unquote community facilities. We fought for the money that they were given. We fought for the money that they were given because they were so poorly paid. But unfortunately, the money didn't go to the workers because we do the contract. It didn't go to the workers. When the CEO's figures went up to 3 digits, but the workers had to have 2 and 3 jobs. Some of them work just for health benefits if it's offered. That's the community. We know what we're talking about because we are there and we represent them. Let me just say another word about the governor's recent announcement that he was going to spend $125,000 per bed to build group homes. Committee, I almost said my sisters and brothers because I'm a union person. This is not a new story. This is not new. Several years ago, the legislature passed a bond issue for $160 million. About $10 million of that money was spent. What happened to the rest of it?
I remember that quite well, and there was never any money for staffing.
Then that puts you and I in the same age bracket.
In case anybody didn't notice.
Because I lived through that too. Yeah. And we're still asking what happened to that money. Now there is the proposal to put more money out there, but you hear about building roofs, but you never hear about services. A house cannot service a client. It takes people to service them. Let me just also say that the department claimed that there will be minimum impact on the employees once Vineland is closed, that you have 2 other facilities in the area. Well, they're suggesting that we don't have people in those facilities. These facilities are fully staffed. It's baloney. It's baloney. Well, I didn't want to say that. And let me just state one other thing, and I'm sorry for skipping around because I think Senator Van Drew had my testimony. He said everything I was going to say. But let me
cheated,
just...
I heard you a lot of times.
let me just say that of the people who have been moved, they're talking about people being moved out in the community. Since November of 2010 and up to March of this year, 59 people have been moved out of Vineland. 37 went to other facilities. How is this community ready? My testimony will be shared with you, and in that testimony is a memo that was put out by the department that said everybody must be made community ready. How can you make somebody community ready who can't even talk? I haven't even talked to their families. Maybe the department don't care, but my members do care. My members do care. They reference these residents as my clients, ownership. That's the way they treat them. I would implore the Department of Human Services to take that same position, to say these are my residents, and have the same approach that we have about the care of these people. What is happening there is unconscionable, and it behooves us who have sane mind, thank God, a sane mind. If we don't do what we're supposed to do and take care of these people, then shame on us. And we're not opposed to community placement. As I said before, I have members working in the community. We know what's on both sides. We can see both sides of the spectrum. The community is not ready, because I say to my people, when a client comes in the community, and they don't belong there and they start to act out, we say to them, call the police, because the human services don't want to hear it. I also represent correction. Correction does not know what to do with them because they have landed in jail. You know, we are responsible for what happened to these people, and shame on us if we can't step up to the plate and take their best interest rather than what Alabama is doing. You know, if Alabama jump off the cliff, are we gonna jump off too? We have to do independently what is best for this most vulnerable, fragile population. I thank you for hearing me. Sorry, I got emotional.
Wow.
I wouldn't want to follow that.
Not at all. First of all, let me thank the chairs of this committee and its members. My name is Cheryl Gordon. I am the Executive Director of the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. Much like my sister, we represent approximately 30,000 public sector employees throughout this state, but we also have a large affiliate that does 99% of their business in the private sector. So we are not opposed to community-based
pedophiles, etc. The question is, what is the Department of Human Service doing? And I need to set this for the record because I've had this conversation with you, Senator, Chair Lady, but I haven't had it with the Assemblywoman. Assemblywoman Tucker and I made it very clear publicly that we're going to ask both chairs to hold a joint hearing, not just on this issue. This issue is germane to where people are going. When they come, and I also can say this to you, there's this discriminatory practice. Under the auspices, we'll put people back in quote-unquote their communities. No problem with that. They do the same thing with inmates. But when you come to certain communities, after you dump, without evaluating and analyzing who can live in the community, who cannot live in the community with support systems, they're forgotten about in cities like Newark and Camden and Patterson and Jersey City. And that's where, and I'm just using them as examples, that's where I have a problem with the Department of Human Services. I don't basically blame the commissioner, but I will hold her accountable because she goes back. These conversations aren't new to me as a legislator. I've been doing this 25 years in the Senate. But Republicans and Democratic governors have never paid attention. You need to listen to these union reps and these workers. And this is not about whether it's union or non-union, where we fight in unions. They are arguing the case in their capacity about real people in this state from a very diverse perspective as relate to gender, as relate to ethnicity, but as relate to a series of healthcare problems as well. Robin Sims, who testified, is a young lady who I go way back with. I can remember when she was a different weight class. She fought for those with disabilities because of her kid, and since then got sick herself. When we put on a commissioner, these little cliques that we identify to be on these commissioners, they're locked into this scenario we are hearing about today. They never want to hear the other side of it. So I want to be in a record to say we're going to hold another hearing, not just on the closing of Vineland, and I'm respectfully asking both chairs to make it a joint committee meeting, because the Assemblyman and I, we don't chair the committee, but we're members, and we don't want to have to do it ourselves. But we want to take a look at this, and we want to take a look at the shelters and the boarding homes and everything else that human service is supposed to be overseeing and placing real people with real problems in. And then we need to be on record, and through the chairs, I'm requesting that the Department of Human Services and the Department of DCA, because they should be working together, let us know every investigation, the number of investigations that's going on in the state of New Jersey as relate to these community-based homes where we're placing people from Vinelands and other institutions, the investigations and numbers going on boarding homes, and the numbers that's going on in shelters. because the question is, are there any investigations at all? And if the numbers we get depict what I think they should be depicted, they should be very substantial. If they're not substantial numbers, then it means to me that they're not doing their jobs, because we don't even know where half these facilities are located. So I just want to be on record. And the final thing is, I respect the art people, but that's about privatization. I mean, it's wonderful to collect money at the top, and we do need people transitioning, but it's like the prison system. You know, folk want to privatize it, so they knock out the facilities in the communities or institutions, in this case, where people should be, just provide more beds and location on another side. Now, he may not like that statement, but that's real. I've watched this for 25 years. I know there are lobbying efforts. I know there are relationships. I know the government's relationships. I know relationships of the senators and the assembly people who've been around. And so we need to stay focused as to what the workers here are telling us and what the parents are telling us. No one has been opposed to a transition in the community. That's our whole goal. We hope and wish that no one ever got sick or had a disability, but that's God's doing. In the meanwhile, we're supposed to be the angels to take care of these folk. Workers not going to lose jobs because we're transitioning people if people are ready to go to the community, because unfortunately there are others coming behind, regardless of the technology, that still have problems. And so I want to be on record with that statement, and I want to be clear where I stand, and this is why you're going to continue to have problems from me at the state level, whether it's regardless who the president is, regardless who chairs are, until somebody pay attention to those of us who represent a lot of this district, as you do down here, Senator, and as your assembly people do. They're not listening to us. They always tell us what they want to give us. We have a problem, well, we'll give you this. No, 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 we have a problem, let's tell you what we need. And that's the problem with state government. They want to give rather than letting us define what it is we need to resolve those problems, but to diminish them. So I had to at least set it on record while the people here and while we have a joint committee, I'm not going to change, and I'm going to continue to be their champion, too.
Senator Rice, we do have your task forces up for the next Senate Health Committee agenda.
Yes, but we need to hold a public hearing because the commission need to come back, and that hearing we need to bring in DCA too. We need to find just what's happened to the people that's being represented and served by the people here today.
Okay, now, as I told you at the outset, it's now 25 to 4. Both Valerie, Assemblywoman Huddle and I have to leave at 4 o'clock. And that will mean that the formal part of the hearing is over, but I asked Senator Rice on behalf of the Health Committee if he is willing to stay beyond that to hear as many of you as he can for another 45 minutes or an hour, and he's agreed to that, and Assemblyman and Assemblywoman Tucker will join him. So we could use a little solace about now. Thank you.
No, it's Father John. We're friends. He's been my pastor for years, and he comes down to...
Despite my vocation, I'm going to be brief. My name is John Powell. I am priest to Laura Gordon, who has been a resident in the West Village. She's been in Vineland Development Center for 39 years. She is 50. If she were articulate, perhaps she would be here, but she is aphasic. Perhaps if she could speak to me, she would say, no, I don't want you. I'd have somebody else. But he's dead. So on behalf of the prophet Micah, I have 3 short points. Do justice. Do justice to the residents. You've heard the Supreme Court to say, do justice. Not merely be legal, but do justice on behalf of these residents. The parents and the families, the brothers and the sisters want justice. The employees, the caregivers, those who are here in the Vineland Developmental Center in the middle of the night, caring for these residents, for Laura, want justice for these people. Point number 2, love kindness. Laura's mother, Muriel Gordon, loves her daughter and cares for her and does everything that she can. And will tell you that Laura's cared for well on the West Campus here at the Vineland Developmental Center. And this is the best place for her, because the loving staff shows kindness to her, the kind of kindness that her mother can give as well, only they do it competently. Point number 3, walk humbly. Walk humbly. Act humbly. And when it comes time to vote, vote humbly, because the residents, the parents, the families, the employees, the caregivers, and old Micah and God are watching. Thank you.
We could use a little solace about now. Thank you.
No, it's Father John. We're friends. He's been my pastor for years, and he comes down to...
Despite my vocation, I'm going to be brief. My name is John Powell. I am priest to Laura Gordon, who has been a resident in the West Village. She's been in Vineland Development Center for 39 years. She is 50. If she were articulate, perhaps she would be here, but she is aphasic. Perhaps if she could speak to me, she would say, no, I don't want you. I'd have somebody else. But he's dead. So on behalf of the prophet Micah, I have 3 short points. Do justice. Do justice to the residents. You've heard the Supreme Court to say, do justice. Not merely be legal, but do justice on behalf of these residents. The parents and the families, the brothers and the sisters want justice. The employees, the caregivers, those who are here in the Vineland Developmental Center in the middle of the night, caring for these residents, for Laura, want justice for these people. Point number 2, love kindness. Laura's mother, Muriel Gordon, loves her daughter and cares for her and does everything that she can. And will tell you that Laura's cared for well on the West Campus here at the Vineland Developmental Center. and this is the best place for her. Because the loving staff shows kindness to her, the kind of kindness that her mother can give as well, only they do it competently. Point number 3. Walk humbly. Walk humbly. Act humbly. And when it comes time to vote, vote humbly, because the residents, the parents, the families, the employees, the caregivers, and old Micah and God are watching. Thank you.
My name is Vito Coletti, and my wife's name is Mary. We have a daughter, Karen, who resides at Vineland Developmental Center in Jones Cottage, West Campus, for the last 29 years. She's 55 years old and is severely retarded, and she's very autistic. Right now, she's in the process of moving to the East Campus because the West Campus is closing. A proposal has been made to close the center in its entirety. This comes as a complete shock to us. We are writing this letter to oppose this closing. Our daughter does not read, talk, feed herself, brush her teeth, shower, is not toilet trained, and needs 24/7 care. Karen is not like doctors, strangers touching her, or new buildings that depend solely on the staff for comfort and security. Right now, they are trying to get her associated with the day trips to East Campus. It's not working. I hear that this has failed. She wants to go home, which is West Campus, Jones Cottage. Being that Vineland Developmental Center met all the requirements by the federal government, we feel that the center should be left open. We also feel that our daughter's rights would be violated. We hope you hear what we are trying to tell you. Keep the developmental center home, or closed. I'm sorry. Mr. and Mrs. Coletti. That's it.
Thank you. My name was Vineland State School. She's 73 years old. She entered at the age of 7 and has been there for 66 years. I have a prepared statement which you're welcome to read, but in sitting back here listening to everybody, and I did try to listen and I didn't applaud, I heard things that I felt need to be said. Somebody gave a figure that 99.9% of the people at Vineland Developmental Center are eligible to go into the community. Yeah. Barbara falls within that 1% that is not. She is profoundly retarded. If her medication is not exactly right, and they call me frequently and tell me that they think they need to adjust this or they need to adjust that, she self-mutilates. She used to bang her head, but now she's in a wheelchair with a tray, so she can't get her head to anything to bang it on, but she still hits herself in the face and scratches herself if she's able. She doesn't know she's in an institution. And although I am her legal guardian, technically Barbara is a ward of the state. And it sounds to me like the state's desire to close Vineland Developmental Center means that they no longer care for her, they no longer want to be responsible for her, and they want to pawn her off into the private sector. And if the private sector can handle the care, the same care, then why haven't they done it in the last 66 years? Barbara is content where she is. She knows she's clean and fed and cared for by people who care for her. She is located in the community. Her community, her home is in the community of Vineland Developmental Center. She doesn't like any change in her routine. She can't last through her IHP meetings. We have to take her out. She gets very upset at any disruption, and moving her from one facility to another, just the idea of putting her in a van and taking her somewhere. She used to go to the mall. She doesn't like the noise at the mall. They don't take her to the mall anymore. She
it's not fair to say she's a vegetable, she's a person, but she likes her own routine day after day after day in the place that she is comfortable. And I'm here to be a voice for Barbara because she has no voice. She's blind, she can't talk, she can't help herself with any of her systems. And I've only been coming here since 2006, but the people I've dealt with have been wonderful to her, and I believe that this is where she belongs. And I would hope to God, I pray every night, that this is where she'll live till the end of her days. Thank you.
I know my father very well, and some of you actually know me very well. Last month, in April, was the beginning of my 29th year as a state employee. I began my career as a human services attendant at the Vineland Developmental Center. And after all this time, I took promotions and promotions. All I've ever done is work hard for you. All I've ever done is given service to the ladies and gentlemen in the institutions and in the community. Right now, you're all talking about the community. I'm the person that they come to. I'm the person that these individuals come to, and it's my job to make sure that everything in their life is what it should be. All right. All I've ever done is serve you. All I've ever done is work hard for these people. And I cannot believe that at 29 years, the service that I've given to the state of New Jersey is so demeaned. It's diminished. It's like I'm a bad person. I'm the reason that taxes are so high. I'm the reason that there's waste in government. All I have ever done in my entire life, actually I started my career with this population when I was 14. There was a private institution across the street called Ames. Some of the people from Vineland remember it. I started there at the age of 14. I was a summer recreation counselor every year through high school, every year through college. When I came back to New Jersey to finish my college, I went right back there, and then I crossed the street and began to work for the state. One of the things that nobody has mentioned, I don't remember exactly what year it was when they depopulated the institution for the first time. And many, many, many ladies and gentlemen left that institution and have wonderful, wonderful lives today. I know because I'm the one that is coordinating their lives. But there was a whole bunch of them that went to nursing homes. They went to nursing homes. And these were the most fragilely, medically, I don't know what the number is. I know that that number is available somewhere. How many of those people had died 6 months after they were gone? 6 months after leaving the institution and going into a nursing home, they were dead because the nursing homes did not have the specially trained staff. They didn't have the specially trained doctors. They didn't have enough staff to take care of these women. When I started my career, I worked as a human services attendant. I did not come in the door in some middle-level job. My job was to bathe, feed, shower, dress, change these ladies and gentlemen. I almost killed one of those girls my first week on the job because I didn't know how to feed her properly. And if it wasn't for somebody taking me aside and showing me how to do it, I probably would have. To take care of the ladies that need this medically challenging, fragile people, you can't just put them in nursing homes, and that's what the state is probably going to do, because there are no medically fragile group homes or settings around. There was a gentleman who wrote an article in the Vineland paper for Elwyn, and he talked about, we built 32 or 60-some medically challenged group homes. But nobody mentioned the fact that they're in California. They're not here. All right? You can't, please don't do this. Please, it doesn't matter if I have a job. I'm going to have a job. All right? I'm actually thinking of ending my career back on the grounds because this is the way things are going. It's very unstable. I'm like, you know what? I started there. I can end there. Thank you for listening to me.
Did you write a letter to the Daily Journal?
Years ago. Yes. No, I didn't do it. I was thinking of doing it years ago. Somebody was
Sir, state your name.
My name's Brian
and
McGee.
Who you represent, where you from?
My sister Mary Ann is a resident of Vineland Development Center. She's been at Vineland Development Center for over 4 decades. My parents, her parents, are deceased.
Bring your mic a little closer.
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I'll start over. My name's Brian McGee. My sister Mary Ann is a resident at the Vineland Development Center. She's been at the center for over 4 decades. Both of her parents, my parents, are deceased. My parents made the difficult decision to enter Mary Ann into the development center, and it has been, my family, extended family believes, has been just wonderful for Mary Ann. Mary Ann cannot talk, she cannot feed herself, she cannot walk, she cannot bathe herself. She is in total dependency, and they've cared for her, and she's 56 years old now. She's been through illnesses, just received terrific care. I do feel as though that is her community. I feel it's been a good location for her. Myself, my earliest memories of going down there, I'm 44 years old, so I've been going down since I was a child. It's always been an environment where the people were very friendly, nice, and it was reassuring that she was being taken care of. And I know my parents passed away feeling that she was going to be taken care of. They felt that she was at a spot where she was going to be safe. And we want her to stay at the Vineland Development Center. That's our desire. And if any change is going to occur, just the way we've received information has been very poor. Just a phone call out of the blue asking, what do you want to do with your sister? It has to be more formal, it has to be face-to-face, and it has to be all of the family members need to be made aware of it. So I just ask, at the minimum, I ask that we be treated in that manner, that Mary Ann, since she cannot vocalize for herself, that the family members be given a face-to-face meeting to decide if any change is going to occur. But at the base, our desire is for her to stay at the Vineland Development Center. It's been an excellent, excellent facility for her.
Thank you. Why don't we have the young lady speak? Given deference to you, I apologize for letting them speak first. Yes, go ahead. Move over to the mic. You got to go ahead.
So, my name's Peg Kinsel. I am the Policy Director of the Statewide Parent Advocacy Network. I will, in deference to you, Senator Rice, I will just modify my comments a little bit, not read my testimony. I have handed it in. And I want to talk a little bit more about some other parents that we represent